I'm Maya, 19 years old, and currently a sophomore in college. Right now, I'm sitting in my childhood bedroom staring at my empty savings account on my laptop screen. My parents drained every penny to buy my younger brother Jason a shiny new motorcycle. The funny thing, I'm not even angry. I'm actually laughing because that account they emptied was actually a legal trap, and they just triggered it big time. Before I dive into this wild story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had a backup plan that saved you when others tried to take advantage of you. When people first meet my family, they usually think we're the picture of suburban success. My father, Richard, is a bank manager who prides himself on his financial expertise and community standing. My mother, Susan, teaches English at the local high school and is well liked by students and faculty alike. Then there's my younger brother, Jason, who at 16 has been the center of my parents' world since the day he was born. On the surface, we seemed like the perfect family, but beneath that carefully cultivated image was a deeply unbalanced dynamic that I felt the weight of every single day. From as early as I can remember, there was a stark difference in how my parents treated Jason and me. While I was expected to be responsible, independent, and perfect, in every way Jason was coddled, pampered, and excused for any shortcoming. When I was 10, I had to maintain straight A's, keep my room spotless, and help with household chores. Meanwhile, Jason at 7 was praised endlessly for the simplest achievements and had his messes cleaned up without comment. This pattern only intensified as we grew older. By 14, I was expected to start earning my own money for extras, like new clothes or outings with friends. My parents explained that this would teach me valuable life lessons about work and responsibility. I got my first job at Sweet Dreams Bakery, waking up at 5 in the morning on weekends to help with the morning rush. The owner, Mrs. Fernandez, became something of a mentor to me, showing me kindness and appreciation that I rarely felt at home. Jason, on the other hand, received a generous allowance without having to lift a finger. When he wanted the latest gaming console, my parents bought it without hesitation. When he needed sports equipment for whatever new activity had caught his interest that month, the credit card came out immediately. The same requests from me were met with lectures about saving money and setting priorities. My relationship with my father was particularly strained. Richard would scrutinize my expenses, questioning every purchase, while simultaneously handing Jason $20 bills whenever he asked. During family dinners, he would interrogate me about my grades and future plans, setting impossibly high standards that left me feeling perpetually inadequate. Maya, Harvard doesn't accept B-plus students, he would say even when I was just 12 years old. With Jason, the conversations were light and filled with laughter, his academic mediocrity dismissed as finding his own path. My mother wasn't much better. Though occasionally she would give me sympathetic looks, she never stood up to my father's blatant favoritism. Instead, she enabled it, making excuses for Jason while holding me to the same exacting standards my father did. "Your brother is different," she would whisper when I questioned the unfairness. "He needs more support." Somehow my needs never seemed to factor into the equation. The inequality was painfully obvious during birthdays and holidays. On my 16th birthday, I received practical gifts, a planner, some clothes for school, and a small gift card. 2 months later, when Jason turned 13, he got the latest iPhone, expensive sneakers, and a lavish party with 30 of his closest friends. My celebration had been a quiet dinner at home with just the four of us. Christmas followed the same pattern. My pile of presents was always noticeably smaller than Jason's and contained mainly necessities, while his overflowed with the latest gadgets and trending items. Family vacations weren't much different. Jason's preferences dictated our destinations, and his comfort was prioritized at every turn. If I wanted to visit a museum or try an activity, it was an inconvenience. If Jason suggested the same thing suddenly, it became the highlight of the trip. The only person who truly saw me was my grandmother Margaret, my mother's mother. Grandma Margaret had been widowed young and built her own successful small business selling handmade jewelry. She was fiercely independent, warm, and possessed the kind of quiet wisdom that came from overcoming real hardship. From the beginning, she noticed the disparity in how my parents treated Jason and me, and she made it her mission to provide me with the support and validation I wasn't getting at home. Our weekly Sunday visits to her cozy house became my sanctuary. She would listen intently as I shared my achievements, struggles, and dreams, offering genuine praise and constructive guidance rather than criticism. "You have a good head on your shoulders, Maya," she would tell me, her eyes crinkling with pride, "and an even stronger heart. Those two things will take you further than anything else." When I expressed interest in attending college out of state, my parents immediately discouraged it, citing the expense and suggesting I live at home and attend community college instead. Grandma Margaret, however, took me to visit campuses, helped me research scholarship opportunities, and promised to help with expenses. "Education is an investment no one can take from you," she said firmly, shooting a disapproving look at my parents when they tried to discourage me. She became my strongest ally and my safest harbor in the storm of family dynamics that often left me feeling invisible and undervalued. What I didn't know then was just how thoroughly she would protect me even beyond her lifetime. My journey into financial independence began the summer I turned 14 and started working at Sweet Dreams Bakery. The early morning shifts were exhausting, but there was something deeply satisfying about earning my own money. Each paycheck felt like a small step toward freedom, a tangible proof that I could take care of myself without relying on my parents' conditional support. Grandma Margaret noticed my growing interest in financial independence and took it upon herself to teach me about money management. One afternoon after my shift at the bakery, she invited me to her kitchen table where she had set out homemade cookies and a notebook. "Maya, sweet girl, let me teach you something they don't cover in school," she said, her silver hair gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. "How to make your money work for you." Over cookies and tea, Grandma Margaret introduced me to the concepts of budgeting, saving, and investing. She showed me her own meticulous account books, explaining how she had managed to build security for herself after my grandfather passed away unexpectedly in his 40s. "The first rule," she said firmly, "is to pay yourself first. Before bills, before fun, before anything else. 20% of everything you earn goes straight into savings. Non-negotiable." Under her guidance, I created a simple system for managing my bakery earnings. I divided each paycheck into envelopes: 20% for long-term savings, 10% for education, 10% for future car expenses, and the remaining 60% for immediate needs like clothes, school supplies, and occasional treats with friends. I was strict with myself, sometimes going without things my peers took for granted, to ensure I met my savings goals. As high school progressed, I added more jobs to my repertoire. By sophomore year, I was working at Sweet Dreams on weekend mornings, babysitting for neighborhood families on Saturday evenings, and tutoring younger students in math and science during the week. Every dollar was carefully tracked and allocated according to the system Grandma Margaret had taught me. My parents noticed my growing independence with mixed reactions. My father seemed almost resentful that he couldn't control me through financial means anymore, while my mother occasionally expressed concern that I was missing out on my childhood by working so much. Neither of them recognized that their treatment had forced me to grow up faster than I should have had to. When I turned 16, Grandma Margaret suggested it was time to open a proper bank account. "Having money under your mattress might work for small amounts, but you're building something significant now," she explained. "You need the protection and interest that a proper account provides." There was a complication, though. As a minor, I couldn't open an account without an adult cosigner. My first instinct was to ask Grandma Margaret, but she suggested we include my parents for a specific strategic reason. "We'll open an account with your parents as cosigners," she said with a knowing look. "It's important they feel involved and aware. Trust me on this, Maya." What I didn't understand then was that Grandma Margaret was already thinking several steps ahead. The day after we opened what I considered my official savings account at First National Bank, with my father as a cosigner, Grandma Margaret took me to a different bank across town. "Now we open your real savings account," she said with a mischievous twinkle in her eye. "This one will be between you and me only." At Community Trust Bank, we opened a custodial account with Grandma Margaret as the custodian. She explained that upon my 18th birthday, this account would automatically transfer fully into my name with no other access. Into this account went the majority of my savings, while I maintained a smaller balance in the official account that my parents knew about. "Your father checks the accounts at his bank," Grandma explained. He'll see regular deposits into your visible account and think that's all there is. Meanwhile, your real money stays protected. I was shocked at first. Isn't this dishonest? I asked hesitantly. Grandma Margaret's expression grew serious. Maya, there's a difference between privacy and dishonesty. You're entitled to privacy, especially given how your parents have handled money regarding you and your brother. This isn't about deceiving them. It's about protecting yourself. Over the next 2 years, I followed her advice. I made regular modest deposits into my official account, while channeling the majority of my earnings into the private account only Grandma and I knew about. By the time I was ready to graduate high school, I had accumulated approximately $15,000 in the visible account and over $30,000 in my secret fund. Grandma Margaret supplemented my savings with occasional birthday gifts that went straight into the private account. "Consider this an investment in your future," she would say. "You've earned it with your hard work and responsibility." When I was 17 during my senior year of high school, Grandma Margaret's health began to decline. What started as just a bit of tiredness was eventually diagnosed as advanced pancreatic cancer. The prognosis was grim, and despite aggressive treatment, we knew our time together was limited. During one of her better days, when she was between treatments and relatively comfortable, Grandma Margaret insisted on having a private conversation with me. My parents had taken Jason to a baseball game, giving us the afternoon alone in her hospital room. "Maya," she said, her voice weaker, but her eyes as sharp as ever, "I need to make sure you're protected after I'm gone." She explained that she had updated her will and made arrangements with her attorney, a kind but formidable man named Thomas Harris. "When I'm gone, if anything happens with your parents regarding your money, I want you to go straight to Tom. He has documents and instructions that will help you." I tried to protest to change the subject to something less final, but Grandma Margaret was insistent. "Promise me, Maya. Promise you'll stand up for yourself and the future you deserve." Through tears, I promised. 3 weeks later, just after my 18th birthday, Grandma Margaret passed peacefully in her sleep. In the midst of my grief, I had no idea how prescient her concerns had been, or how soon I would need to fulfill my promise to her. The transition to college life was both exhilarating and terrifying. I had been accepted to Westlake University, a well-respected school about 3 hours from home. It wasn't Ivy League, which my father never failed to point out, but it offered an excellent program in business finance and had awarded me a partial scholarship that covered about 60% of my tuition. My plan was to use a portion of my savings to cover the remaining tuition and living expenses, supplemented by a campus job. I had researched carefully and created a detailed budget that would allow me to graduate with minimal debt, assuming I could maintain my scholarship and work part-time throughout my college years. Moving day was a study in contrasts. While my roommate Zoe arrived with her entire family, who spent hours setting up her side of the room with coordinated bedding photos and small comforts from home, I made the journey with just my parents, who seemed impatient to drop me off and return home. They had agreed to drive me only after I pointed out it would be impossible to bring all my necessities on the bus. "We can't stay long," my father announced as we unloaded the last box. "Jason has soccer practice this evening, and we need to be back in time." My mother gave me a quick hug, my father an awkward pat on the shoulder, and then they were gone, leaving me alone in a half-decorated room, with the weight of independence suddenly very real on my shoulders. Zoe turned out to be a blessing I hadn't anticipated. Bright, friendly, and studying psychology, she quickly picked up on my discomfort when the topic of family arose, and never pushed when I changed the subject. She came from a warm, boisterous family in Arizona and seemed genuinely baffled by my parents' distant behavior. "My mom would literally move into our dorm if they let her," she joked one evening as we arranged our study schedules. "I have to remind her I'm an adult now." "That must be nice," I replied, trying to keep the wistfulness from my voice. "Having someone care that much." Zoe gave me a thoughtful look, but didn't pry further. Instead, she simply included me in her family video calls and care packages, introducing me to her parents as my brilliant roommate who's going to be running Wall Street someday. It was a small kindness that meant more than she could know. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of adjustments. The freedom was intoxicating after years under my parents' critical eyes. I could choose my own schedule, eat what I wanted, and spend time with people who seemed to value my company without conditions. At the same time, the responsibility was daunting. Every decision from managing my class workload to budgeting for textbooks and meals rested entirely on my shoulders. I found a job at the campus bookstore that worked around my class schedule and joined the finance club where I met other students who shared my interest in business and investment. For the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged, charting my own course without the constant comparison to Jason or the weight of my parents' uneven expectations. Communication with my family was sparse and usually initiated by me. Our weekly phone calls followed a predictable pattern. Brief inquiries about my classes, followed by extended updates about Jason's latest accomplishments, neighborhood gossip, and complaints about everyday inconveniences. I learned to keep my responses upbeat and vague, protecting myself from the criticism that inevitably followed any admission of struggle or uncertainty. About 2 months into my first semester, the tone of these conversations began to shift. My father, who had rarely shown interest in my financial management before, suddenly had numerous questions about my college expenses. "Tuition must be eating through your savings," he commented during one call. "How much do you have left in your account?" "I'm managing fine," I replied cautiously. "My scholarship covers most of the tuition, and my job at the bookstore helps with expenses." "But specifically, what's your current balance? As your father, I should be aware of your financial situation." I deflected, uncomfortable with his sudden interest. "It's enough to cover this year, and I'm being careful with spending." These inquiries became more frequent and pressing in subsequent calls. At the same time, my mother began dropping hints about Jason's upcoming 17th birthday. "He's been talking about nothing but motorcycles," she mentioned casually. "He's convinced it would be more economical than a car for getting around town." "Motorcycles are dangerous," I replied, remembering the statistics I'd learned in a campus safety workshop, especially for inexperienced drivers. My mother laughed dismissively. "Oh, you know your brother. Once he sets his mind on something, there's no changing it." I thought little of these conversations until late October, when I received an automated email from First National Bank alerting me to a large withdrawal from my savings account. According to the notification, nearly all the funds, just under $15,000, had been withdrawn that afternoon. My hands shook as I logged into my account to confirm what I already knew: my balance had dropped from $15,000 to just under 100. The transaction note simply stated "withdrawal," with my father's name listed as the authorizing party. In a panic, I immediately checked my secret account at Community Trust Bank. Relief washed over me when I saw the balance intact, now over $35,000, with the interest it had accrued. At least my parents didn't know about those funds. I tried calling my parents immediately, but the calls went straight to voicemail. My texts received no response. After hours of anxiety and anger, I made a decision: I needed to see for myself what was happening. I booked a bus ticket home for the following weekend, not bothering to inform my parents of my arrival. As the bus carried me toward the confrontation I never wanted but couldn't avoid, I felt a strange calm settling over me. Beneath the hurt and betrayal was a realization: perhaps Grandma Margaret had foreseen this moment all along. Perhaps this was exactly why she had insisted on our secret account and her mysterious instructions about her lawyer. Whatever awaited me at home, I wasn't as defenseless as my parents might believe. I just didn't know yet exactly what weapons I had at my disposal. The bus pulled into my hometown station at 7:30 on Friday evening. I hadn't told my parents I was coming, so I took a rideshare from the station to our suburban neighborhood. The driver, a chatty middle-aged woman, filled the silence with local gossip that I barely registered as my anxiety mounted. When we turned onto my street, I noticed extra cars in our driveway, suggesting my parents were hosting friends. Great. An audience for what was sure to be an uncomfortable confrontation. I asked the driver to drop me a few houses down, preferring to approach on foot and gather myself before entering. As I walked up our driveway, the garage door was open, revealing something that made my blood run cold: a gleaming, brand new motorcycle in racing red. Even with my limited knowledge of motorcycles, I could tell it was expensive. Probably one of those models Jason had been drooling over in his motorcycle magazines. The price tag would easily match the $15,000 missing from my account. I stood frozen, staring at the physical evidence of my parents' betrayal. It was one thing to suspect they had taken my money for Jason, another entirely, to see it so blatantly displayed as if they had nothing to hide, nothing to be ashamed of. Taking a deep breath, I entered through the front door. The sound of laughter and conversation drifted from our dining room, where I found my parents hosting another couple, their longtime friends, the Thompsons, along with Jason, who was animatedly describing something with grand gestures. Maya. My mother's shock at seeing me was evident, her wine glass pausing halfway to her lips. What are you doing here? Is everything okay at school? I decided to surprise you, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I received an interesting notification from my bank yesterday. The mood in the room shifted instantly. My father's expression hardened, and my mother's smile became fixed and brittle. Jason, oblivious to the tension, jumped in excitedly. Maya, did you see my new bike? It's a Yamaha YZF R3, 300 cubic centimeters of pure awesome. Dad picked it up yesterday. The Thompsons exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly sensing they had stumbled into a family situation. We should probably get going. Mrs. Thompson said, standing up. It's getting late and you all probably want to catch up with Maya. After a flurry of hasty goodbyes, we were alone, the four of us standing in the dining room, with the remnants of dinner still on the table. I broke the silence. $15,000, I said quietly. That's how much was withdrawn from my account yesterday. Did it cover the entire cost of the motorcycle, or did you have to add some of your own money too? Jason's excitement faltered as he looked between me and our parents. Wait, what? Your account? My father stepped forward, his banker persona taking over. Maya, let's discuss this privately. Jason, go to your room. No, I insisted. Jason should stay. He should hear exactly where his new toy came from. My mother intervened, her voice soothing, but with an edge of warning. Maya, you're upset and I understand that. But there's no need to be dramatic. We were going to call you about this. When after the money was spent, after there was no way to get it back. My father sighed with exasperation as if I were being unreasonable. We needed to make a decision quickly. The dealership was having a sale, and the model Jason wanted was the last one in stock. So you decided to empty my college savings account money I earned working since I was 14. Jason looked increasingly uncomfortable. Dad told me you agreed to help with the bike, that you said it was okay to use some of your savings because you had plenty from your scholarship. I laughed bitterly. Of course he did. I turned to my parents. I never agreed to anything. You didn't even ask me. You just took it like it was yours to take. My father's expression darkened. Technically, it is ours to take. I'm a co-signer on that account. Legally, either party can make withdrawals. I was a minor when we opened that account, I countered. I'm 19 now, an adult. That money is mine. My mother stepped in, her tone placating. Maya, honey, we're family. In this family, we support each other. You have that nice scholarship, and you're doing so well. Jason needs this motorcycle for getting to his college classes next year. We're just redistributing resources where they're needed most. Redistributing? I echoed in disbelief. You mean stealing? And since when does Jason need a racing motorcycle for community college? A used car would be more practical and much less expensive. But everyone in my friend group is getting motorcycles for their birthdays, Jason interjected, as if that explained everything. I stared at my brother, seeing for the first time how truly entitled he had become. It wasn't entirely his fault, I realized. Our parents had created this expectation that his wants would always be prioritized regardless of cost or consequence. So let me understand this, I said, turning back to my parents. You took my $15,000 without asking to buy Jason a luxury item he doesn't need, money that was meant for my education. And you think this is perfectly acceptable because we're family? My father nodded. We'll pay you back eventually, of course. When we can. When you can. What does that mean exactly? Next month? Next year? Never. My parents exchanged glances, and I knew the answer. There was no real plan to repay me. In their minds, my money was family money, available for their use however they saw fit. I worked 3 jobs through high school to save that money, I said, my voice breaking slightly. I gave up weekends, holidays, summer breaks. I got up at 5 in the morning to work at the bakery before school. I stayed up late tutoring after finishing my own homework. For years, I've lived on the bare minimum to build that savings. And you took it in an afternoon for a toy. Jason at least had the decency to look ashamed. My parents, however, remained unmoved. You're being selfish, my father declared. Jason deserves nice things too. It's not his fault you chose to work yourself to the bone instead of enjoying your teen years. Something inside me snapped at those words. The years of unequal treatment, of double standards, and favoritism of being expected to fend for myself while Jason was handed everything crystallized into a cold, clear anger. I'm leaving, I said quietly. And believe me, this isn't over. My mother reached for my arm. Maya, don't be ridiculous. It's late. Where would you go? I pulled away from her touch. I'll stay with Zoe's family. They've already said I'm welcome anytime. It was a lie. Zoe's family lived hundreds of miles away in Arizona. But I needed to leave to escape the suffocating reality of my parents' betrayal before I said something I couldn't take back. As I turned to go, Jason called after me. Maya, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was your money. I'll give the bike back. For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope that at least my brother might understand the magnitude of what had happened. But my father immediately shut it down. You will do no such thing, he told Jason firmly. The bike is yours. Maya is just being dramatic. She'll calm down and see reason. I left without another word, the front door closing behind me with a finality that felt like the end of something I couldn't quite name. Standing on the porch in the gathering darkness, I pulled out my phone and booked a room at the cheap motel near the bus station. Then I made another call to a number I had saved but never used. Mr. Harris, this is Maya Margaret's granddaughter. I think I need your help. The offices of Harris Legal were located in a converted Victorian house in the oldest part of downtown. When I arrived Saturday morning, the receptionist, an elegant older woman named Mrs. Dawson, greeted me with unexpected warmth. Maya, I'd know you anywhere. You look just like your grandmother when she was young. Tom is expecting you, dear. Go right in. Thomas Harris was nothing like I had imagined. Based on Grandma Margaret's descriptions of her shark of a lawyer, I had expected someone intimidating and stern. Instead, I found a grandfatherly man in his 60s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a bow tie that seemed slightly askew. Maya, please come in, he said, rising from behind a large oak desk covered with neat stacks of papers. I've been hoping to meet you, though I wish it were under better circumstances. Margaret spoke of you often, and with great pride. The mention of my grandmother brought a lump to my throat. She told me to come to you if I ever had trouble with my parents about money. I didn't understand what she meant then, but I think I do now. I explained the situation in detail, the account my parents had helped me open, the secret account Grandma Margaret had established, and the recent theft of my college funds. Mr. Harris listened attentively occasionally, making notes, but never interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair with a small smile that reminded me suddenly of my grandmother when she was about to reveal something surprising. Maya, your grandmother was a remarkable woman, and she anticipated something like this might happen. She came to me about 2 years ago to make specific arrangements regarding your financial future. He opened a drawer and removed a thick folder with my name on it. Margaret was very concerned about the pattern of favoritism she observed in your parents' behavior, particularly regarding your brother. She feared they might eventually feel entitled to the money you had worked so hard to save. So she created the secret account, I said, to protect me. Yes, but she did much more than that, Mr. Harris replied, opening the folder. Margaret restructured her will to include a trust specifically for you. The visible account, the one your parents knew about, was intentionally left vulnerable. Vulnerable, you mean she expected them to take that money? Mr. Harris nodded. She suspected they might, especially once you were away at college and less able to monitor the account daily. In essence, that account was set up as what we might call a legal trap. He turned several pages in the folder until he found what he was looking for. Under normal circumstances, parents who are co-signers on a minor child's account retain the legal right to make withdrawals even after the child reaches adulthood, unless the account is formally restructured. However, Margaret and I added a specific clause when you opened that account. He showed me a document with my signature, my parents' signatures, and fine print at the bottom that I had never noticed. This states that upon your 18th birthday, any withdrawals from this account by anyone other than yourself would require your explicit written consent. Without that consent, such withdrawals would constitute unauthorized access to your funds. I stared at the document in disbelief. My parents signed this. Did they know what they were signing? Mr. Harris smiled wryly. People rarely read the fine print, especially when they're in a hurry. Your father was quite eager to get the account opened, as I recall. Margaret made sure I was present for the signing, and I deliberately distracted your parents with other paperwork while you and Margaret reviewed this document in detail. So, what does this mean? I asked, hope beginning to stir. Can I get my money back? It means your parents have committed a legally actionable offense. At minimum, they can be compelled to return the full amount plus interest. In a more aggressive approach, this could be treated as misappropriation of funds or even theft, depending on how we choose to proceed. I don't want to send my parents to jail, I said quickly. I just want my money back. Of course, Mr. Harris reassured me. Criminal charges would be a last resort, but having that leverage will be useful in negotiations. He continued explaining my options. We could send a formal legal notice demanding immediate repayment. If they failed to comply, we could file a civil lawsuit for the full amount plus damages. The most severe option would be to report the unauthorized withdrawal to the police as theft, but as I had indicated, that wasn't my preference. There's one more thing you should know, Mr. Harris added, turning to another section of the folder. The trust your grandmother established for you is substantial. In addition to the money you've saved independently, Margaret left you an inheritance of $150,000 accessible in staged payments. $50,000 now, $50,000 when you complete your undergraduate degree, and the final $50,000 when you turn 25 or complete graduate studies, whichever comes first. I gasped, tears springing to my eyes. The amount was far more than I had ever expected, a life-changing sum that would ensure I could complete my education without financial stress. She never told me, I whispered. She wanted it to be a safety net, not a crutch, Mr. Harris explained gently. She believed in your work ethic and didn't want to undermine it. The first payment has already been transferred to your private account, as specified in her will upon confirmation that you were successfully enrolled in college. As I processed this information, Mr. Harris outlined our strategy. He would prepare a formal demand letter stating the facts my parents had illegally withdrawn funds from my account. They had violated the terms of the account agreement, and they were legally obligated to return the full amount immediately. The letter would also clearly state that if they failed to comply, we were prepared to pursue all available legal remedies. I suggest we give them 1 week to respond, he said. That's generous, but also creates urgency. I also recommend you be present when they receive the letter to see their immediate reaction and address any questions. People often respond more seriously when confronted in person. I agreed to his plan, and we scheduled a meeting at my parents' house for the following day, Sunday afternoon. As I left his office with copies of the relevant documents, I felt a complex mix of emotions, gratitude toward my grandmother for her foresight, anger at my parents for their betrayal, and a new sense of confidence in my ability to stand up for myself. Mr. Harris's parting words stayed with me. Maya, what your parents did wasn't just financially inappropriate, it was a betrayal of trust. You have every right to protect yourself and to demand accountability. Margaret raised you to be strong, and tomorrow you'll show just how strong you are. Sunday afternoon arrived with the weight of inevitability. I had spent the night at the motel reviewing the documents Mr. Harris had prepared and practicing what I would say. By the time we pulled up to my parents' house, I felt calm and resolved the initial shock and hurt, now channeled into purposeful action. Mr. Harris had suggested I enter first alone to avoid my parents' immediate defensiveness at seeing a lawyer on their doorstep. I'll wait in the car until you text me, he said. Give yourself a few minutes to set the stage. I found my family in the living room. My father reading the newspaper, my mother folding laundry, and Jason playing video games. They looked up in surprise when I entered, clearly not expecting me after our confrontation the previous night. Maya, my mother said cautiously, we were worried when you didn't come home last night. I stayed at a motel, I replied evenly. I needed time to think. My father lowered his newspaper with a sigh. If you're here to continue yesterday's drama, we've already discussed this as a family. The decision has been made and the motorcycle purchase can't be undone. Actually, I said, taking a seat across from them, I'm here to discuss the legal implications of what you've done. That got their attention. My father's expression shifted from dismissive to wary, while my mother looked confused. Jason paused his game, suddenly alert to the tension in the room. I've consulted with Grandma Margaret's attorney, Mr. Harris. He'll be joining us shortly. But first, I wanted to give you the opportunity to explain yourselves one more time. Why did you think it was acceptable to take my money without permission? My father's face reddened. There was no taking involved. As a co-signer on the account, I have every legal right. That's not accurate, I interrupted calmly. If you had read the account agreement carefully, you would know that after my 18th birthday, all withdrawals by secondary account holders require my written consent. Your withdrawal was unauthorized and illegal. My mother paled. What are you saying, Maya? That we stole from you? We're your parents. Being my parents doesn't give you the right to take what isn't yours, I replied. But we can resolve this simply. Return the money you took from my account with interest, and we can put this behind us. My father scoffed. This is ridiculous. We don't have $15,000 just sitting around to give back to you. The money has been spent. Then sell the motorcycle, I suggested. It's brand new. You should recover most of what you paid. Absolutely not, my father declared. The motorcycle was a gift to Jason. We're not taking it back. I nodded, having expected this response. I texted Mr. Harris, and within minutes he joined us in the living room, introducing himself professionally and setting his briefcase on the coffee table. Mr. and Mrs. Lawson, I represent your daughter in this matter. I have here a formal demand letter outlining the unauthorized withdrawal you made from her account and the legal consequences if the funds are not returned in full within 7 days. My father's confidence began to waver as Mr. Harris methodically explained the situation, presenting copies of the account agreement with the relevant clauses highlighted. As the legal reality of their position became clear, my parents' expressions shifted from defiance to concern. This is a family matter, my mother protested weakly. We don't need lawyers involved. It became a legal matter the moment you took funds that weren't yours, Mr. Harris replied calmly. Maya has been quite reasonable in her request. She's not seeking punitive damages, just the return of what rightfully belongs to her. My father, drawing on his banking background, tried another angle. Even if what you're saying is true, which I'm not conceding, we simply don't have the means to return $15,000 right now. We'd need time, a payment plan, perhaps. Mr. Harris glanced at me, and I nodded, having anticipated this as well. My client is willing to accept full payment within 30 days provided you sign this agreement acknowledging the debt and your obligation to repay it. However, there must be immediate good faith action. The motorcycle must be returned or sold within the week with those proceeds applied to the debt. That's not fair to Jason, my mother objected. He shouldn't be punished for our mistake. At this point, Jason himself spoke up, surprising us all. Actually, I don't want the bike anymore. Not if it was bought with Maya's money without her permission. That's not right. My brother's unexpected support touched me deeply, suggesting that beneath the spoiled exterior, there was still a sense of fairness and decency that our parents hadn't completely erased. My father, realizing he was losing ground, attempted one last stand. This is all very dramatic and unnecessary. I'm sure we can work something out as a family without all these legal threats. Mr. Harris reached into his briefcase and removed another document. I should also inform you that in the event Maya doesn't receive full satisfaction in this matter, we are prepared to file a police report regarding the unauthorized withdrawal. While Maya has no desire to see her parents face criminal charges, the law does classify this type of unauthorized access to funds as theft. The word criminal finally broke through my father's resistance. The color drained from his face as he realized the potential consequences extended beyond financial inconvenience to possible criminal charges that could devastate his banking career. You wouldn't, he whispered. I don't want to, I replied honestly. But I will if necessary. The choice is yours." After a tense silence, my parents agreed to the terms. The motorcycle would be sold immediately with the proceeds going toward repaying my account. The remaining balance would be paid within 30 days. They signed the agreement. Mr. Harris had prepared, their signatures noticeably shaky. As Mr. Harris prepared to leave, my father made one last attempt to regain control. "I hope you realize what you've done to this family today, Maya. Some things can't be undone." I looked at him steadily, feeling a strength and clarity I had never experienced before. "You're right, Dad. Some things can't be undone. The trust I had in you and Mom is one of those things, but that's not on me. That's on you." After Mr. Harris departed, I stayed to have a private conversation with Jason. Despite everything, he was still my brother, and his willingness to give up the motorcycle had shown me there was hope for our relationship, even if the one with our parents might never fully recover. "I'm really sorry, Maya," he said when we were alone in the backyard sitting on the old swing set where we had played as children. "I had no idea they took your money without asking. They told me you had offered to help." "It's not your fault," I assured him. "They've been setting us up against each other for years. You got the easier role, but in some ways they hurt you too." Jason looked confused. "How did they hurt me?" "By never expecting anything from you. By never letting you face consequences or work for things you wanted. They taught you that everything should be handed to you, and that's not how the real world works." He was quiet for a moment, processing my words. "So what happens now? Are you going to cut them off completely?" I sighed, looking up at the clouds drifting across the autumn sky. "I don't know yet. I need time to figure that out. But I do know that things will be different from now on. I won't let them take advantage of me again, and I won't pretend everything's okay when it's not." "What about you and me?" Jason asked hesitantly. "Are we okay?" For the first time that weekend, I smiled genuinely. "We can be. It'll take work on both sides, but I'd like to have a real relationship with my brother. One based on mutual respect, not competition or resentment." Before I left, I made Jason a promise: if he was serious about learning responsibility, I would help him find a part-time job and teach him how to manage money the way Grandma Margaret had taught me. It was a small beginning, but perhaps the start of something healthier between us. As I headed back to campus that evening, I felt lighter somehow, as if standing up for myself had released a burden I hadn't fully recognized I was carrying. Grandma Margaret had given me not just financial security, but something far more valuable: the tools and courage to protect myself and define my own worth. The days following the confrontation with my parents were surprisingly quiet. I returned to campus and threw myself into my classes and work, finding comfort in the routine and in the newfound sense of security that came from knowing my financial future was protected. Mr. Harris kept me updated via email, confirming that my parents had indeed returned the motorcycle to the dealership and recovered most of the purchase price, which was promptly transferred back to my account. True to their signed agreement, they arranged for the remaining balance to be repaid within the 30-day window. I suspected my father had taken out a personal loan to fulfill this obligation. An ironic reversal for a bank manager who had spent years lecturing me about avoiding debt. Communication with my family was minimal during this period. My mother sent occasional text messages, awkward attempts at normalcy, that carefully avoided any mention of what had happened. My father remained silent entirely. Jason, however, began reaching out regularly, sending updates about his job search and asking for advice about opening his own savings account. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself engaged in a complex process of emotional healing. The betrayal had cut deep, exposing the fault lines in relationships I had spent years trying to repair, or at least tolerate. There was grief for the family I had wanted, but never truly had anger at the years of unequal treatment, and a lingering sense of sadness that it had taken such a dramatic confrontation to establish boundaries that should have been respected all along. Zoe noticed the change in me, commenting one evening as we studied in our dorm room that I seemed both sadder and stronger somehow. "You carry yourself differently," she observed, "like you've put down something heavy you were carrying." "I guess I have," I replied, realizing the truth in her words. "I've stopped trying to earn love that should have been freely given." During winter break, I chose not to return home, instead accepting an invitation from Zoe to join her family in Arizona. The contrast between their warm, chaotic household and the cold formality of my own family home was striking. Her parents argued sometimes, her siblings teased each other mercilessly, but beneath it all was an unshakable foundation of love and respect that made even their conflicts feel safe. By spring semester, I had established clear boundaries with my parents. Our conversations, while civil, were brief and focused primarily on practical matters. I no longer sought their approval or shared my achievements, protecting myself from the criticism or dismissal that had so often followed in the past. It wasn't the relationship I had wanted, but it was one I could manage without constant pain. With Jason, however, things improved steadily. He had secured a part-time job at a local garden center and opened his own savings account. We spoke weekly, and I could hear the pride in his voice when he told me about making his first independent purchase, a used computer he had saved for over several months. "I get it now," he told me during one call. "Why you were so upset. It feels different when it's money you earned yourself." My academic performance flourished without the weight of family drama and financial insecurity. I maintained my scholarship, excelled in my business courses, and even secured a prestigious summer internship at a financial advisory firm. The trust fund from Grandma Margaret allowed me to focus entirely on my studies without the need to work excessive hours, though I maintained my bookstore job more for the experience and connections than the income. As I approached the end of my sophomore year, I made a decision that surprised even me. Using a small portion of my inheritance, I established a modest scholarship at my former high school, specifically for students who were working to support themselves through school. I named it the Margaret Wilson Memorial Scholarship in honor of my grandmother, and worked with the school counselor to establish criteria that would identify students who, like me, were navigating challenging family dynamics while trying to build their futures. The first recipient was a quiet junior named Alicia, who worked 30 hours a week at a local nursing home while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. When I met her at the awards ceremony, she confided that her parents had divorced the previous year, and neither was providing financial support for her college aspirations. The $5,000 scholarship wouldn't cover everything, but it would give her a foundation to build on, just as Grandma Margaret had done for me. "People like us have to be strategic," I told her after the ceremony. "We have to plan more carefully and work harder than others. But that same struggle makes us stronger in ways they might never understand." As I drove back to campus that evening, I reflected on how much had changed in a single year. The pain of my parents' betrayal hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something else, something that felt almost like gratitude. Their actions, while hurtful, had forced me to stand firmly in my own power, to establish boundaries that should have existed all along, and to recognize that true family isn't always defined by blood. Grandma Margaret had known this truth and had prepared me not just financially but emotionally for the moment when I would need to protect myself. Her legacy wasn't just the money she left me, but the wisdom, foresight, and courage she had instilled through her example and guidance. I still had moments of sadness for what might have been for the parents I wished I had, but those moments no longer defined me. Instead, I focused on building the life I wanted, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide or how I made them look. The following summer, I invited Jason to visit me at my campus apartment. He had just graduated high school and was preparing to start community college in the fall. During his visit, we had the kind of honest conversation that had never been possible in our parents' house. "They've changed, you know," he told me as we walked through the campus grounds. "Dad's less controlling, Mom's less enabling. I think what happened with you was a wake-up call." "I'm glad," I replied sincerely. "Not for my sake, but for yours, and for theirs too. No one benefits from those toxic patterns, not even the ones who seem to be getting their way." "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" he asked. I considered the question carefully. Forgiveness isn't about erasing what happened or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about not letting that hurt control your future. So yes, in that sense, I'm working on forgiveness every day. Not for them, but for me. As we continued our walk, I realized that the greatest lesson from this painful chapter wasn't about money or legal rights, but about the nature of true family and the power of standing up for yourself. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for others is to refuse to participate in patterns that harm everyone involved, even when that refusal is mistaken for selfishness or cruelty. The journey of healing wasn't linear or simple. There were still difficult days, uncomfortable family gatherings, and moments when old wounds felt fresh again. But I was no longer the person who would silently absorb mistreatment to keep the peace. I had found my voice, set my boundaries, and discovered that I was stronger than I had ever imagined. And in that strength was a kind of freedom I had never known before, a liberation from the desperate need for approval that had shaped so many of my early decisions. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come wrapped in the most painful experiences. And sometimes the greatest gift we can receive is the opportunity to discover just how capable we truly are when pushed to our limits. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who took advantage of you? What boundaries did you set, and how did it change your relationship? Share your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more content about setting boundaries and building healthy relationships. Remember, protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. And you deserve to be treated with respect, especially by those who claim to love you.